Okay, so Flag. Flag is a very straightforward poem, and it's about a flag, which is convenient. The idea is to analyse what a flag means to people. And for this person, John Agard, flags indicate a certain amount of allegiance to a country, and he doesn't trust them. There's a certain amount of mistrust. So this poem is about the power of a national flag. How a flag can induce people to do things they wouldn't ordinarily do in the name of patriotism. So the two important things, a key word there, patriotism and power. He also thinks that the flag is a cause of conflict. Because people are patriotic, they have this, what he would consider an illogical desire to defend something that is bestowed upon them, i.e. where they're born. So it's a cause of conflict, and it's a sign of patriotism, a flag. The poem itself is, if you look at it, it's very regular. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stanzas of 3 lines. And the first line of each stanza is a question, which indicates that this is a conversation between two people. And the questions, if you look at them, what's that fluttering in a breeze? What's that unfurling from a pole? You know, they clearly show a lack of knowledge. They're naive. They're naive questions from a naive person. It could be a child, it could be somebody, who knows. But the idea is it sets up the second and third lines. It allows the poet to dictate his message through these naive questions. The responses are very blunt and cynical. There isn't any balance in the response in lines 2 and 3 of each stanza. They are indicating the poet's thoughts, feelings, and attitudes. Of first, feeling of cynicism. He's cynical about flags and the way they're used to control populations. He has contempt for the flag for the same reason. And he is giving us a warning of the dangers of patriotism, the fact that we can be made to do things in his eyes against human nature and morals and doing the right thing. So if you look at the questions, we have these verbs. What's that fluttering? What's that unfurling? What's that rising? What's that flying? Those verbs are quite nice. They're quite pretty in a way. Flags are pretty, so it gives a sense of looking up in wonder almost for this person. A lack of knowledge and a curiosity to find out. And then we have in the third line other verbs: brings, makes, dares, will, outlive. And the contrast between these two is in 2 or 3 ways. The first way is that they are completely different in the sound of those. Fluttering, brings. You know, the fluttering is airy, it's nice, it suggests positivity, whereas brings is very factual, it's to the point, and it is in stark contrast to fluttering. The same with makes and unfurling, dares and rising, will and flying. Also, each of these verbs, brings, makes, dares and will, they're commands. They are imperatives. They are, to bring, to make, to dare, I will. The idea behind them is that it suggests there isn't any choice, that they compel people to do things. So that's the first bit of language that's worth considering. you've got the question and the response, which you must consider also. And now down here, it tells you it's a contemporary poem. And it isn't talking specifically about an event. Think of some of the other poems, they're very clearly about a moment in time, whereas John Agard is reflecting on the history of conflict, if you like, and how flags are used to mark territory, to assert authority. So this is much more of a general reflection on something he feels strongly about, and it has a lot to do with identity and who we are, and how we are not necessarily in control of our own identity. We conform to the identity of a nation, which can be seen in the major conflicts around the world, past and present. Okay, the language on the whole for the responses, you would say it's quite rhetorical. It's forceful. It's just a piece of cloth that brings a nation to its knees. It's just a piece of cloth that makes the guts of men grow old. So it's emotive. Bold. The guts of men. Nation to its knees. The imagery there is clear. That to bring a nation to its knees is to cripple it, it's to bankrupt it, it's to morally bankrupt it. The guts of men grow bold in the face of the obvious dangers, that dares the coward to relent. It's just a piece of cloth that dares the coward to relent. And the fact is, we have a rich history of war, and you only have to understand how we treated people who didn't want to go to war, how they were shown as being cowards, how they were executed for being cowardly, for not being patriotic. It's just a piece of cloth that will outlive the blood you bleed. And there's obvious truth in that long before we were born, the Union flag, or the St. George's Cross, was flying over these lands, and it will be there long after we're dead. So we are part of something much bigger, and we conform to the history of that flag. The only other thing to note about the form, the structure and form, is the second line is the shortest line. It's just a piece of cloth, it's just a piece of cloth, it's just a piece of cloth, 4 times, repeated, emphasising the very factual bit of information that it is just a piece of cloth that happens to have a certain number of colours arranged in a certain pattern, and it symbolises such a lot. You only have to think of, the swastika, the famous flags, how emotive that is, and what you and what other people think of when they see that flag. You only have to think of England at major football tournaments and how all the flags suddenly come out, and the connotations that arise with that. For example, I wouldn't be seen dead with one because I don't want people to think I'm some sort of fascist scumbag. And that isn't because I'm unpatriotic, it's just that the flag doesn't symbolise that for me, and it symbolises, it has negative kind of associations, let's say, even though it's a very lovely flag. Also, it's the shortest line, the second line of each stanza. It's very blunt, it's to the point, it's repetitive. It emphasises what I've just gone over, the factual nature of what a flag is. And in the final stanza, it changes to just ask for a flag, my friend. So the question, how can I possess such a cloth? It makes it sound so appealing, and it is for so many people. Just ask for a flag, my friends. Then blind your conscience to the end. So it changes. This is the one shift in that structure. It changes because I think John Agard appreciates the inevitability of human nature, which is that we want to be attached and belong to things. So very few people go against the norm, they conform to that norm. And to do that, he suggests you have to blind your conscience. And we know what happened to conscientious objectors. They were seen as cowards, and it's very difficult for you to be anything else. Comparative poems to this, from a conflict point of view, probably more or less all of them, but the Yellow Palm is very close in terms of how conflict is meted out on people, and patriotism. In terms of patriotism, you've got next to, of course, God, America, I, which is a very obvious link.